How can we be certain that the history we have been taught is completely true, or that societies evolved as our culture has taught us they did? Independent researchers from all around the world are shedding new light on this topic, and the mystery gets deeper every day. Did the planet once host highly developed civilizations? We are fascinated by the past and its mysteries, from presumed lost continents to ancient cities with impossibly stunning architecture. But it's crucial to have an objective view of the evidence that can be uncovered to distinguish between fact and fiction. With this in mind, what if we told you that there was an empire greater than Britain and greater than Rome? And what if this empire has largely been forgotten in the throes of history? Tartaria was the name of a pre-Mongolian empire that began in northern Asia before spreading throughout the entire northern hemisphere. According to legend, the Tartarian Empire prospered and may have used advanced technologies such as free energy, developed cutting-edge multifaceted systems, and built the most opulent and astounding architecture. Online researchers have been perplexed by the Tartarians as they delve through historical maps from as far back as the 15th century and beyond. The Tartarian theory is currently seen as though the history of human societies and culture has been purposefully obscured. Online study, and to a large degree, speculation on this topic has led researchers to develop some intriguing theories and points of view. There is an important point that we will reiterate throughout this series. We will be talking about the actual Tartarian Empire at times, but also about the Tartarian Old World theory, which is multifaceted and doesn't always have to do with the Tartarian Empire. It is important to distinguish the difference between the Tartarian Empire and the Tartarian theory as they overlap, but are not exclusive of each other. Keep this in mind as we take you down the rabbit hole. One of the oldest mentions of Tartaria dates back to 1252 when Giovanni da Pian del Carpine wrote the book. The story of the Mongols, whom we call the Tartars. In the very first chapter, he describes very vividly the details about Tartaria, including the landscape, the people, the culture, and even waging war against them. It is important to note that in the first chapters of this book, the inhabitants of Tartary are described in a different way from that of a highly advanced society of the past. It is mentioned, for example, that the climatic conditions of the Tartary region were very harsh for the sustenance of life. Furthermore, that the inhabitants of Tartary, although they were friendly among themselves, showed hostility with those who were not part of the empire. The fact that Tartaria is also the source of the Greek term Tartarus is significant and intriguing. The Tartarian Empire is thought to have been buried and eradicated during a cataclysm like a mud flood, which is why the Greeks used the term Tartarus to refer to the underworld, where lost souls spend eternity. The Tartarians, or Tartars, were an indigenous people who, at some point in history, were united into a large society that eventually developed into a great empire with a global reputation. According to legend, the Tartarians were exceptionally tall people, with some possibly standing 8 to 12 feet tall on average. To our modern average height of only about 6 feet, they would have been giants. This leads us to some important questions. Why were they completely wiped off the map? What happened to this great empire? It is said to have been possibly a single country split into multiple different smaller civilizations. These include Petite Tartary, Eastern Tartary, Chinese Tartary, and even Russian Tartary. There are multiple examples of old maps showing huge swaths of land with depictions of big cities throughout the empire. Where did these cities go, and what kind of technology did they use to build highly articulate architectural structures? We can see all kinds of antiquitech on these buildings. What were the true purpose of these spires on top of old buildings? The theory suggests that they were used to tap into free energy in the ether. Internet researchers have been making some wild claims, but one of the most interesting is that many of the modern cities we inhabit today were here long before us. At some point, as speculators have mentioned, our modern society showed up and began to inhabit them. Perhaps the orphans of the 1800s were sent to North America to inhabit the empty cities. Was there already a major societal reset and we don't even know it? Were horse and buggy societies of years ago truly capable of building some of these architectural marvels? These may not even be in Europe, but can be as far east as Asia and even in North America. Perhaps a better way of putting it is that the civilization of Tartary is literally the civilization buried under us. As the Greeks would have put it, Tartary literally meant the underworld. There are legends about creatures of enormous height and physical prowess in this theory. They were not quite Homo sapiens, but they are in virtually every ancient society. The giants. It is interesting to compare the average heights that these races of giants allegedly possessed. In all of the ancient legends, the giants are exterminated from the earth following a global catastrophe that wipes out their culture and some signs of their transit across the globe. This is another distinguishing feature of the analysis of the giants. We can take a look at old architecture from around the world. Were some of these buildings and cathedrals really built for 6-foot-tall humans? Doors look like they were designed for giants. Great halls and places of worship with ceilings so high it would be unimaginable to build something like that today for the price at the time. The doors at Santa Cruz would seem to be built for something we haven't seen on this world at all. Why would the architects do this? Was it really our society that built these structures? Did this ancient society have a bigger reach around the globe than we may have originally thought? There are countless examples of very similar symbols, architecture, maps, and general knowledge that can be found in impossible locations across the globe. The similarities can be found before humans were known to even travel such large distances. How did this knowledge move around the world so quickly? Why can we find examples of this in so many different places today? As the theory goes, the old world empire had technology not known to us and were far more advanced than we think. Throughout the 19th century there were a number of world's fairs in the modern era. Whether in Europe or North America, most people have heard of world's fairs. What was their intended purpose, though? As internet researchers have noted, these world's fairs were unbelievably expensive for the time. Who foot the bill for these feats of construction? According to history, it was mostly private business owners that paid to build hundreds of structures and buildings in these world's fairs. Take the Centennial Exposition of 1876 in Philadelphia. The main building itself enclosed a jaw-dropping 21.5 acres of space. It measured 464 feet by 1880 feet long. Would anyone build such a structure these days only to tear it down? Yes, they were temporary buildings and eventually most were torn down. What's so intriguing about this is why would profit-oriented business barons be interested in spending fortunes to build huge cities worth of temporary buildings? As one online researcher put it, these buildings were so extravagant they cost a fortune to build, but generally, according to history, hundreds of them were built within only a year or two. This would be astounding by today's standards. Further, these huge and expensive world's fairs were all operated at a loss. If society still had these today, who would pay for it? Do these buildings look temporary? What really is strange is that there aren't many photos of the construction of these world's fairs. Mostly only deconstruction photos. Apparently, many people attended these. You can look at the population of some of the cities they were built in at the time, and it was only a few thousand people. Why would they do this for only a few thousand people? Who had the skills to build these structures in a horse and buggy society? Is it possible that the orphan trains and boats of the 19th century were used to populate the New World? As some researchers have claimed, the cities already existed, and if populated by orphans, humanity would essentially suffer a collective memory loss. Even insane asylums at the time were overboard for the populations they served. Were there an abundance of people that needed to go to insane asylums? The architecture for these places, just as in previously mentioned locations, is over and above what would be required for an insane asylum. We do believe that there was a great union of tribes of common origin, which ended up inhabiting a large area of land, and whether they were unified in an empire, they surpassed the size of any other. Among some of the details concerning the theory, it is mentioned, for example, that the great structures of the Tartars that worked through the ether and that fed their cities are currently used by the great world elites as museums, castles of royalty, and religious sanctuaries. And this would be the reason why these places transmit changes in the energetic vibration of the people who enter. In actuality, if there were any remnants of Tartarian technology and knowledge, they were deliberately hidden. But is it really that easy to hide so much evidence? Did the so-called mud flood occur worldwide? Was the level of the mud from the flood the same in all the regions that it occurred? What happened to the giant inhabitants of Tartary? We will try to summarize some of the latest research in this topic to get a better understanding of our hidden history. Stay tuned for more next time. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up icon. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notifications for new videos.